Pablo Escobar, the man who built an empire on cocaine, chaos, and unimaginable wealth, had a secret. And no, it wasn't another hidden stash or luxury mansion tucked away in the Colombian hills. It was something oddly wholesome, a need for speed, and not the kind you snort. Turns out Escobar had a genuine passion for racing, real racing, behind the wheel, helmet on. In a 1974 Porsche 911 RSR that once belonged to none other than F1 world champion Emerson Fittipaldi. Yeah, that Fittipaldi. But how does the world's most feared cartel boss end up gripping the same steering wheel as an F1 legend? And how did this rare, historic car vanish into obscurity only to reappear decades later with stories to tell? To figure all that out, let's go for a ride. Now, before he became the face of the Medellin cartel, before the billions and bloodshed, Pablo Escobar was chasing something else entirely. Checkered flags. Long before the world knew him as the king of cocaine, Escobar was quietly making a name for himself on Colombia's racetracks. It all started in 1966 in the humble Copa Renault 4 Series. Picture it. Boxy little sedans buzzing around tight corners driven by amateurs with more guts than gear. Escobar was right there, racing those quirky little cars like his life depended on it, and by the late 70s, he was landing on podiums. But of course, this was Escobar, the same man who didn't believe in losing, whether it was in business or on the track. Rumors swirled that he'd enter multiple cars in a race, all with the goal of blocking out his rivals. And if that wasn't enough, he allegedly even used local police to rig the game in his favor. You know, just your average weekend racer stuff. Still, here's the twist. Escobar's public reputation began on the race circuit, not the street corners. To many Colombians back then, he wasn't yet the shadowy drug lord. He was a local hero with a fast car and an even faster rise. And in that moment, it wasn't about smuggling or shootouts, it was just about a man, a machine, and a finish line. He even shared the track with Ricardo Londoño, a fellow Colombian who'd go on to brush shoulders with F1 royalty, if only briefly. Londoño's F1 dreams were crushed when whispers of cartel connections reached the paddock. Still, for a brief moment, these two men, bound by ambition, danger, and speed, chased the same dream. And Escobar? Well, he wasn't done chasing it, not by a long shot. As Escobar's empire swelled, so did his garage, and eventually the humble Renaults just wouldn't cut it. Enter the big leagues, a 1974 Porsche 911 RSR IROC. Not just any RSR either. This was a thoroughbred, once piloted by none other than Emerson Fittipaldi himself in the very first International Race of Champions. That's like buying a used car and finding out it belonged to Lewis Hamilton. This Porsche had race history baked into its chassis, but Escobar? He wasn't interested in preserving its legacy, he was rewriting it. He slapped on a slant-nose 935 style front, added a bold martini livery, and gave it the swagger of a car that had no business being quiet. Subtlety wasn't really his thing. With this beast, Escobar raced in hill climbs and local circuits across Colombia, blurring the line between sport and spectacle. One race in particular became the stuff of legend. Ricardo Londoño, the same Londoño who'd brushed the edges of F1 fame, lined up against Escobar. Pablo didn't just challenge him on the track, he made it personal. Word is, he bet he could finish the race within 15 seconds of Londoño. He ended up just 8 seconds behind. Not bad for a drug kingpin moonlighting as a driver. But this wasn't just about racing, it was about image, power, respect. Escobar wasn't there to collect trophies, he was there to show that his money, influence, and raw nerve could take him anywhere, even to the edge of elite motorsport. The Porsche wasn't just a car, it was a message on 4 wheels, and while the engine roared, Escobar's name began to race through Colombia in a whole new way. By the late 70s, racing wasn't just a thrill for Pablo Escobar, it was a tool, a public stage where he could flex more than just horsepower. While other drivers showed up with pit crews, Escobar brought in police escorts. Rivals didn't just worry about lap times, they worried about being blocked off the track by squad cars or intimidated into submission before the race even started. This wasn't motorsport, this was narco theater. And post-race, let's just say the champagne didn't stop flowing. Drivers, crew, even spectators were reportedly showered with gifts, bubbly, and how do we put this delicately? Hospitality is the right word. Women, parties, bribes. Escobar made sure every event was a spectacle and everyone left talking about him. He turned racing into a lavish display of wealth, charm, and raw intimidation. It wasn't enough to be fast, he had to own the event, start to finish. But the manipulation didn't stop at the local level. Escobar even bankrolled Ricardo Chuchilla Londoño's attempt to reach the holy grail of motorsport, F1. Londoño was talented, no doubt, but behind the scenes, Escobar's money greased the wheels, literally funding his path to a test seat with Ensign in 1981. It almost worked, until F1 boss Bernie Eccleston got wind of cartel connections. Londoño's super license was yanked before he could even start a race. Racing, it turns out, was the perfect double play. It stroked Escobar's ego and cleaned his money. A high-speed laundromat where the roar of engines drowned out the whispers of corruption. Motorsport was expensive, poorly regulated, and elite. Just the kind of environment where dirty money could hide in plain sight. Sponsoring drivers, buying cars, backing events. It all created the illusion of legitimacy. In the same way Escobar built schools and handed out food in Medellin, he used racing to build his image as a man of the people. But it was never just about the people. It was about power, perception, and control. Behind every burnout and podium finish was a man playing a much bigger game, one where the stakes were life and death, not laps and trophies. As Escobar's war with the Colombian state intensified throughout the 1980s, the racetracks fell silent. Gone were the days of high-speed glory and post-race parties, when you're dodging assassination attempts, ordering hits, and making Forbes' richest list via international drug trafficking. Motorsport becomes less of a priority. His public appearances faded, and so did his presence on the grid. Racing, once a symbol of his swagger and control, just simply wasn't safe anymore. The risks weren't on the track, they were in the streets, the skies, and even his inner circle. By the time he was gunned down in 1993 on a Medellin rooftop, Escobar's Porsche had long since disappeared from the spotlight, much like the man himself. And then, decades later, it returned. Like something out of a movie, the same 1974 Porsche 911 RSR IROC resurfaced. Not in Colombia, but in the United States. Dusty history intact, it was now being pitched not just as a rare race car, but as the Escobar race car. A vehicle soaked in both racing legacy and narco lore. Atlantis Motor Group brought it back to life, restoring it to its original Fittipaldi spec. Gone was the slant nose mod and the loud livery. This was now a faithful recreation of its IROC days, complete with Penske provenance and documentation to back the whole wild tale. And the price? Over $2 million. Because apparently even in death, Escobar's name could still spike value like a turbocharged engine. What started as a race car became a conversation piece, a museum of contradictions on wheels. Fittipaldi's grace, Escobar's chaos, motorsport's beauty, and its dark, strange detours. The 1974 IROC Porsche 911 RSR isn't just a car anymore, it's a relic, a rolling contradiction. On one hand, it's motorsport royalty, one of just 15 ever built, raced by Emerson Fittipaldi in the inaugural IROC race. On the other, it's tangled up in the legacy of one of the most infamous criminals in modern history. A car that once tore through Colombian circuits under Escobar's grip now sits polished and restored, valued at over $2 million. Its worth driven not just by rarity, but by the shadow of the man who once raced it. Escobar's racing chapter is often buried beneath the weight of his brutal reign, and maybe that's fair. His cartel left a trail of violence that can't be downplayed. But if you zoom in on this strange detour in his life, you see something else. A man who, despite his empire of fear, still sought legitimacy, still craved the adrenaline of a clean pass, the respect of a podium finish, the illusion of normalcy. Racing wasn't just a thrill for Escobar, it was a disguise, a way to play the gentleman, and it worked, at least for a while. He stood next to real drivers, funded real talent, and he got close to the edge of Formula One. And now, decades later, his name is whispered not just in crime documentaries, but in car auctions, collector circles, and motorsport lore. That's the twist. Pablo Escobar, drug lord, fugitive, and killer, is also remembered bizarrely as a racer. It's a duality that feels almost fictional, but it's real, and it leaves us with a car that doesn't just go fast, it tells a story, one of power, obsession, and the strange places ambition can take you. Even if it's behind the wheel of a Porsche, chasing a dream that speed alone could never outrun. What do you think of Escobar's hidden racing past? Is it fascinating or slightly terrifying? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you're here for more wild car stories, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.